Our next speaker is Kristi Scott. She's Program Director of the Institute of Ethics and Emerging Technologies, and she's also a doctorate student at Southern Illinois State University. Southern Illinois University. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about understanding the role of popular culture. I'm a mass communications and media arts PhD student. So I'm looking at all the technology and the various things from pop culture and film, actually. So what do I do? Here's the complicated version. I study what is between the social and cultural discourse, understand dominant ideologies being communicated, and how the public makes sense of robotic technology. Right? Okay. I had to focus, so robotic technology is where I went. So what does that mean? It means that I look at how we democratize technological discourse, how it's not just the privileged expert, as some researchers have said, that talk about these technologies. It's so that everybody can weigh in and a variety of people can talk about this stuff and communicate with each other about what's going on and not be pushed out of the conversation because their opinions aren't privileged or expert. Mainly my focus is about how people make meaning about the real-world technologies. So how do we talk about all these technologies and how do we communicate to scientists about what these technologies mean to us? So I've seen a lot of videos and a lot of research, and a lot of the feedback that is being given is science fiction film movies, especially with these robotic technologies. People are saying, well, that's like the Terminator, or well, that's like Gattaca, or something to that effect. And it seems that a lot of the research is kind of leaving off a further exploration of what people are really meaning when they use these science fiction references. And it was interesting today to hear everybody talk and hear a lot of science fiction references come up. So we're using this because it's a jumping off point so that we all understand and we have the context and that meaning to pick up from there and not have to explain. So what is the deeper meaning? I'm looking at the racial representations. I'm looking at the gender representations. If you're using an example such as Terminator, you've got a white male, oppressive, dominant figure. Are we trying to propagate that type of ideology? Are we communicating these forward? Are we representing various groups and various genders and various racial groups? So finally, how we can use media to understand future social and cultural situations. A few years ago I presented and I talked a little bit about the cinematic playground. So I really kind of picked up on that and tried to move that forward and look at how we can use film as a way to explore ethical and social situations. Some of the ways that I've been doing this is giving some talks. For example, I talked about loving the person within the machine last fall, and it's looking about what it takes to assign personhood and using these two cinematic texts, how people assign personhood. And then it was interesting to see that someone who didn't get assigned personhood in AI was Teddy, despite the fact that he showed love and he responded to Monica in the same way that David did. He was denied that because of his appearance and the way he looked. Not just Monkeys in the House. I did that this past fall at the Terrorism Second Life Conference, taking Frankenstein's monster and looking at how we can take traditional sociological approaches and reapply them to new understandings of identity and representation and personhood. What we could do, how do we assign personhood to these new creations? And how to play in the sandbox. I went to DC last month and gave a presentation at a conference, and what I was talking about is how these different groups actually talk to each other. It shouldn't be this separate understanding. So I looked at the philosophy of technology a lot this past few months, and what it could be to have a democratic discourse, and looking further into film and popular culture kind of as a meta-narrative and a meta-language in which it's a starting point where we can all use that as the way we can talk about these technologies. And then Living with the Robots Rising. This is one that I did this past week, actually, looking at the way that we're communicating dominant ideology through educational and informative text, through public relations text, where it's, oh, robots are so great, and oh, they're so wonderful, and kind of skirting over the ethical issues. And then an educational text that was meant for a classroom with a overtone of fear them, they should be feared. Look at all this great technology that's being done in the lab, but you should be scared of it because it's coming. And then also talking about the future. I'm really interested in AI, Westworld, and Bicentennial Man, and how they represent these different interactions of people. What is it to be a person? Like using these films to understand how we define person. What is it that we deny? What is it that we accept? And then also all the undertones that are going on in there culturally of white male representations, white child representations. You're not getting a lot of variety of representation in women's roles in these films, and where are we at? So my ideas and projects going forward. I'm looking to, and I've been working on a grant to study this robotic discourse further, to try to get an idea of, we talk about these references and we hear people say 2001, or we hear them say Bicentennial Man or Terminator. I'm curious to see if it happens in the images on the screen and also in the physical representations and the interactions. And if there's a disconnect there, what it means to see the physical representation. And then going forward, looking at the text and trying to really understand what we mean when we evoke these images other than this common social understanding. One of the projects that I'm working on is further refining another. And it was alluded to earlier about the other, like it's us and them. So building off of these understandings of philosophy and technology and some other disciplines, and redefining the other as something another, that technology is an extension of ourselves. We're putting a lot of ourselves into it. It's a lot of passion coming from the people who are putting themselves into this. So it's not only important to weigh in democratically, but it's also to understand that it's a recreation of self, and it's another representation of self, as opposed to an other distant thing. It's very complicated. Going further into this exploration of representations of the robotic slave, it was getting struggling. I watched this one film over and over and over again, and I finally noticed, I'm like, what is going on here? And we don't really have a word for it. So I looked. So I ended up making this word boticism, and I'm building it off of the understanding the literature of racism, and it comes down to this extreme hatred of robots that's displayed in films. It's just like racism. We're propagating this other understanding. And I was talking to some friends about it, and my friend said, you know what? I have a lot of people that have lost limbs. And so they've had them replaced, and they refer to their replacement, their artificial amputees, as bots. And they said, what about them? Do they fall into this? So I kind of expanded my definition to include humanoid mechanical embodiments, because I think there may be some, if the event that there's some backlash there, going back to these texts and looking at that too. Finally, publish. That's the good part of academia, right? Like everything has to come out so it can be used and go forward. So another goal for my future ideas and projects is to get that to you guys. I love that Donna Haraway has been used. It's nice to have more female and more varied representations in the discourse. So I pulled Haraway and the Cyborg Manifesto, and I didn't pick the obvious part. I picked the boundary between science fiction and social reality is an optical illusion. These two play off each other quite well. And also, I didn't put in here, but there was a book that came out, and they talked about the fact that in the future robots are going to be able to understand and participate in philosophical discussions, and that at one point they're going to evolve to be able to interact and communicate. And I thought, what are they going to see when they see our media text? So I think that's one of the reasons it's also important. If we're projecting and discussing this from this angle that they're going to be able to participate and engage, shouldn't we also examine what we've had to say up until that point? So, I'm right on time. Okay. Thank you very much. And